What's going on, y'all? I'm Maydrian Lowe, and welcome to my I don't even know what attempt this is to start a YouTube channel, but welcome to my next attempt to start a YouTube channel. I'm a civil rights attorney who has had my foot or hand in quite a few things since this project, but sometimes I just have something to say. And so I think this space will be used to do that, to talk about things that I care about, to talk about life and just lessons I've learned, and sometimes we're just gonna talk. So let's jump into episode 1, which I'm calling Sometimes Community Cost. Because sometimes community does cost something. I think there's a quote going around on social media right now that talked about the price of community is inconvenience. And that's one of the costs that community sometimes has. When I think about it, I've been making content on social media for nearly 4 years now. It's 2025, so I started making content in August of 2021, so over 4 years. But I think a lot about kind of the direction and the way in which I want my content game or the content I make to go in. And I've found myself like kind of sitting with the reality that I value community, my digital community, and like community in my real life way more than I value the currency it creates. I value the relationships I have with like mutuals on TikTok, as well as the people I follow, being a part of their community, and also curating a community of 25,000 people on TikTok that I care about the work and the information I put out there more than I care about creating some sort of like payment or wealth from it, right? And I think there's a lot of conversation right now about the way in which people are leveraging their communities to be, to create this experience as a creator that feels more authentic or more like you're a part of something than it does that you're just a follower or a subscriber to a person, but you are part of this person's community, so much so that this person can anticipate the type of content that you want to see and the type of things that you would expect them to do. They do, right? They are the person that's like creating and pushing content to you that is really tailored towards your interests, because the algorithm, along with the fact that you follow them, is tailoring your view and your content to see the stuff that they want, that you want to see, rather. And I think the hard part about doing like social justice work or racial justice work or anything that is not capital centered on social media, if you're talking about things that don't revolve around money, or even that indirectly like may involve money but don't necessarily center that perspective, it's hard to build not even a large following, but I guess a active community on these platforms, because they just aren't pushing like that type of content. But I do think there's value in it, especially the people who have been successful at it, who have built these large platforms that aren't necessarily like leveraging or using their platforms to try to sell you something all the time, but to try to inform you, try to keep you aware, try to challenge your perspective, try to change your thinking on some things, and to be just in community with those folks is a good feeling and a good tool to have. And I think for me, that matters more than the idea of generating wealth or generating some sort of revenue from content. And that's a realization that I kind of had to come to. Like, that's why I say like community cost, right? I don't ever want the people who follow me to feel like I am promoting or selling or offering something on social media that I don't believe in, something that I wouldn't use, something that I don't care about. On my TikTok page, you'll see I'm like promoting books that I have read, which started as like a Juneteenth book series about just South and stuff like that. But besides that, I mean, a few sponsored posts from just like brands who sent me like a tripod or something like that. But I don't really, it's not that I don't desire to have those type of contents. Of course, I would love the opportunity to make some extra income from social media if there's an opportunity there, but it has to be aligned with the community that I've curated, and also has to be in line with the vision of what I say, because there's no money or there's no amount of money that is worth selling out the community that I've curated, or selling out the community that I claim to be a part of. Any community I claim to be a part of, right? There's no money that will ever be worth that to me. So I think that's important. And I also think it's good to have those types of parameters and guardrails within yourself, because you can also monitor or remove yourself from digital communities where the person who's the leader or the curator of that community does not share that same moral compass or same idea as you. But yeah. And also, community costs you in real life. You know what I mean? I also think to that end, that's where it kind of gets tricky in the digital space too, because I think in a digital space, it when someone disagrees with the actions of a community leader in those types of spaces, there's this kind of conflict, because on one end, some people are like, oh, cancel them, and other people are like, oh, we need to hold you accountable, and then people think that those two things somehow are the same thing. But you can't hold someone accountable that you aren't in community with. Also, you can't expect someone who is not in community with you to anticipate you to hold them accountable. Like, the cost of community for the community leader is that they desire the level of responsibility and accountability to be, those parameters to be kind of in place and for that regulation to happen on them, because they care about you and what you think of them. But if you're not in community with someone and the leader doesn't feel like they're in community with you, or the curator, then they don't feel like they owe you anything. And so what ends up happening is now you have two voices shouting into the void, and one voice is screaming accountability. But if they don't accept accountability, now this person is essentially, we don't use the word cancel anymore, but that's essentially what happens. It's like, oh, we're done dealing with them because they have decided not to be responsible for the way in which their actions in a digital space have created some sort of negative reaction or harmed, or have, maybe just got an opinion wrong about something. They disagree with them about something. Now this person is canceled. Whereas in real life, it's easier to be held accountable by someone in your community with, because this person is for you. Like, you know this person for real. Whereas in social media, I think there are parasocial relationships where people have developed understandings of the way in which they think someone is because of the content that they put online, which may give you insight about someone's personality. But at the end of the day, all of those things are like within almost, it's like talking into a vase. I feel like all of those things are an encapsulation of thoughts, of identity, of personality, of whatever was happening that day in that moment. Like, nothing is set in stone for that. And so it's hard to be so sure that that is how a person is based solely on that perception of them, even if they have a big online presence. There are still parts of their identity that they do not share online. Even if you feel like you know them well enough to be someone to drive like that accountability arc, I think it's important that it also is rooted or starts with someone that knows them in a substantive way. Because those communities do overlap, but I do think that's the hard part about navigating like community online and accountability / cancel culture. But some of it is just that sometimes community costs you something, and you have to maybe hold your tongue or maybe apologize in those spaces when you're wrong in community. And sometimes you have to just do the thing that's inconvenient and be the person to show up maybe some ways that may not be opportune for you. You may have to do some things that may be out of your way or out of your, desired path to get somewhere. But if you are in community with someone and you care about them and you love them, you do it. And that's it for this episode of Sometimes. So I'll see y'all next time. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email at this address. Be sure to subscribe, like, and follow me on all platforms to stay attuned with what I'm sharing. And I'll see y'all next time. We'll talk about something else. All right. Peace. Holla at y'all sometime soon.